otherwise, some of the dynamics of business. And so Joe's channel has just taken off. I mean, he's a longtime podcaster and he's built his own podcast events, and they're fantastic. But when he thought to do the Shark Tank idea, man, I just tell you, he's just been smashing it. And what he's working on right now is some technology stuff. So he's stuck. I'm looking right now. Yeah, he's stuck in sort of a technology limbo. Yeah, Joe, if you go to YouTube, that's probably the best place to start. Just type in either Joe Pardo, Pardo, or Super Joe Pardo. A lot of his stuff will come up. Or just go to here. Look, here's his link. Just go to joepardo.com, and that's his handle. He's on Instagram, he's on Facebook. Super great guy, always communicative. So if you have an idea, and part of what he does professionally is advise businesses. So we'll ask him a couple of questions about that. We'll ask him questions about his podcast. And as soon as we can get, it's nothing. It's so easy to have a podcast, right? And it's so hard to manage all of your own technology stuff. Like if a part goes bad or if something is going like right now, I have no idea what this show sounds like. Maybe, everything's turned on, everything's working properly here. Okay, great. Right. It might sound like crap because you can't control anything from the show out to you all, right? And there is wireless in between all of us. And so how do you deal with these problems? It's a little bit crazy when you try to sort all these things out. And so I appreciate Joe digging in with me and coming on the show. It looks like he's got everything all connected and together. I was just singing your praises, Joe, and your
Oh,
fantastic YouTube channel. You know how hard it is. You have been in the podcast game forever and ever. And I look at my numbers and sure there's growth, but you got to scope way back to see them, right? Like YouTube loves to smash stuff that doesn't fit into the model, but you managed to find something that you enjoy doing, that you're good at doing, that other people want to see. And just in terms of just your YouTube channel, man, what a smash hit it is.
well, first of all, thank you for having me, Peter. And I'm so honored that you offered to have me on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been podcasting since 2014, and but I've been creating content going back to 1996 as a 10-year-old boy, writing about video games on the internet and trying to build like Yahoo groups and stuff, even at like 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. And a lot of other communities in those years. But to me, the thing that stands out the most is it's always about the people, right? And that having great people, getting to connect with great people, to me, that's the biggest reward of all this. Like, you look at the numbers and, when it comes to like YouTube and like, I mean, the YouTube numbers dwarf my podcast numbers for
Right.
far and away. Like, probably like, 30 times more.
Isn't it
It's close.
crazy?
It is. I mean, it's crazy. I think lifetime on my podcast is closing in on 180,000
Sure.
downloads.
Yeah.
And that's in the like what, 8 years?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
versus like closing in on 4 million views in YouTube since 2000 and realistically since March of 2021. So a year and a half later,
Yeah.
we're closing in on 4 million views. So, it's it really comes down to like how do you make something interesting? How do you bring something that's different, that's going to get people's attention, kind of skirts the rules a little bit, and also enables people to find you that wouldn't necessarily be looking otherwise.
Right.
So I'm always looking for, when I look at other people's content, like what can I borrow from something that I find interesting, but isn't in the space that I create content in, right?
Right.
So I watch a lot of tech video, like tech tubers and some video game stuff because I'm a big gamer. And so I take those things, and I try to like, how can I adapt them to what matters to like what I'm good
Mhm.
at, which is business, right? So, and community building. So I've always looking for like, what can I take and apply somewhere else?
Mm. Yeah. That's great. By the way, we never did the official open, so I'm going to point at the camera, and you're going to say, "This is Joe Pardo or Super Joe Pardo," and you're watching the Break It Down show. And that will, at least when we cut the podcast in, we can put that in the front, and this part will just be us chatting. So I'm going to point at the camera and do your thing.
Hey, supers, I'm Joe Pardo, and this is the Break It Down podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the thing about like all of these things, I just sat down with someone. Let me just first say this. When the pandemic hit, man, my podcast numbers, they just took a crap, and they haven't recovered from it because there are now so many options and you have to fight out so much elbow room to really be able to even exist. And you can say whatever numbers you want. No one really even has except for the people that are like superstars that are way up there. You can say your numbers and it just doesn't mean a thing, like if I have 100,000 people that pay attention to my show, which would be a fantastic hit in any universe, but there's just no engagement, who cares, right? But if I had 1,000 people and every time I did a show with an author, they bought 10 to 15 books, well, I mean, then it's worth it, right? And so you have all these, like the metrics are weird. And the other thing I wanted to throw back at you is when you try to build a YouTube channel and you're trying to figure out what to do, there is a path. And if you don't mind just following the path and kind of sacrificing a lot of creativity and original, and you don't mind being a little bit, I'm going to be negative, vapid and banal, like with your, oh my God picture, right? Like you have to do these things because that's how the machine works. Then you can reliably today still build a 6-figure income on YouTube, but you have to follow a very narrow path to get there.
There's a lot to unpack there. So we'll start with the numbers. So when it comes to numbers, like everything is relative. I was speaking of being a gamer, I took my daughter to a LAN party this weekend. For people who don't know that, it's a local area network party. Everybody brings their computers, and they also had like arcade games, and they had a whole bunch of other stuff going on there. But I'm there to compete in some tournament, video game tournaments and things of that, computer game tournaments, I should specify. And afterwards, or actually through it all, I'm talking to my friends, and we're like, why is this not more popular than it was in 2000? Why is it not more popular than it was in 96, 97, 98, 99, even 2007? I mean, we held a 512 person LAN party in 2007, where 512 people from all over the country and I guess Canada, I think there were some Canadians as well, came down and convened in one place with their computers. And there's still LAN parties in lots and lots of places. But one of the things is when you're there, it's not like it was almost 20 years ago. And the main reason, I think, is because there's so much choice, right? So it's not like, hey, Pete, what game do you want to play? And there's like 10 choices really, because it's the year 2000, right?
Yeah.
And there's like 10 recent titles in the last 4 or 5 years that like people actively play competitively against each other. Now there's like 10 choices that come out every month, 10 new games that are hitting this market. So the landscape is so noisy. And actually, I just watched a video. It's funny how YouTube works, because it actually came up with a video talking about like, why are so many games quote unquote dying? Like They have these huge spikes, like a million active players at any time, like, and then all of a sudden it's just like, and it's dead. But dead might be 300,000 people still playing, right?
It's so true.
So so that's, numbers are all relative, and I didn't. I mean, the video I was watching wasn't as in depth as I think I have explanations for, but basically, like, people play the game and then they move on because something else comes out. And to go along with that same conversation is like, you're right. There is so much choice. It doesn't matter if we're talking about games, content, websites. Everything goes in phases. I mean, you think about how big BuzzFeed was just a few years ago. They were going to be the next CNN. Like, they're going to take it over. And even when we talk about things like Shark Tank, right? To bring it back to what I do, when we talk about Shark Tank, the numbers that they're getting are less than 4 million views on air when it airs, right? And sponsors aren't paying for DVR points, if you will.
Right.
They are just like, what are we getting when it airs? how many people can we, how many butts can we get in seats to stay at home on a Friday night at 8 o'clock
Yeah.
or 7 o'clock if you're Central Time, right? It's hard. It's incredibly hard. So even with them, they have. I was talking to somebody who was just on Shark Tank, and he actually has some TV background. We're talking about it. He's like, look, they see, even though the numbers are shrinking year over year. Now, obviously, with 2020, it went up. People were stuck at home. It was a great captive audience, and the numbers have come back down year after year since then. Even with the shrinking numbers, they still see it as a win because it hasn't totally dropped off. It's just, continues to trend down and trend down. So when you think about, like you were saying, 100,000, listeners, right, to each episode. I mean, Shark Tank's hitting just under 3.8 to 3.1 million, and that's like live when it actually airs. So when you think of it in terms like that, well, if you round it up to like, or just, say 4 million, you still have a significant chunk at 100,000 views or downloads, right? Per video, per episode. And when you look at like someone like Mr. Beast, who, if you don't know who that is, look him up. He's doing great things across multiple platforms, mostly YouTube, but multiple YouTube channels. Absolutely, like just everything's on steroids, going crazy, right? With what he does for a lot of different reasons. But listening to because he's been on like an interview tour lately, listening to his interviews, he basically is like, he has it cornered at this point where, he tells the story about, he went to this party. It's all ultra famous people and billionaires, and there's like machine gun like security at the door kind of thing, right? And he's like, hey, I got to give a speech at there, and it's like Squid Game, right? He made a video all about Squid Game, recreated Squid Game, and it's like 200 million views. All of Squid Game did not get 200 million views from Netflix, right? So it's like, he basically was like, assimilate, work with me or you're dead, right? Because if you don't sponsor me, if you don't work with me, you're not going to have anybody paying attention to your brand, and you will ultimately become irrelevant. So work with me or don't and die. And so it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter to me. Someone else is going to pay me, right? And I'm going to give that money away, which, go down the Mr. Beast rabbit hole. It's pretty awesome. He basically, every dollar he makes, for the longest time, he has pulled back a little bit because he has so many people, 150 some employees now, that are all counting on him to, pay their mortgage, pay their bills and stuff. So he used to take every dollar and reinvest it in the next video. He'd make $1,000. That's what his budget is for the next video. He'd make $10,000. That's the budget for the next video, and just kept rolling and rolling. And now I think at this point, he's just making so much money that even at spending, $2 to $4 million, like, you're going to produce an incredible video that nobody else is going to be able to touch, and you're still going to make money at the end of the day, have money extra at the end of the day. But yeah, so looking at it like that, I think your community is just so critical. It doesn't matter if it's one person, 5 people, 10 people, 100 people. I think that if you're living and producing, living your true life, like what's true, to be true to yourself, and allowing other people to hear that voice come through and personality to come through, that there's people that are going to connect with you, and there's people that are going to write nasty comments like I get from time to time about how I need to shut up and go away and never make videos like this again. And I'm like, this is welcome to the internet. Like I still write, I appreciate you watching and commenting. That's awesome that you took the time. You gave me some of your time, more time, instead of just clicking off the video, to write a comment, helping the YouTube algorithm figure out who to serve it to.
Yeah, it's so funny. So you've talked about a lot of things as you were unpacking my complex question, but this gets back to like one of the things I do professionally is I advise people on their podcast, and I think the most common advice I give is like, don't do this. Like, if you're going to spend this much time, start a business. Whatever it is, like, go find a business. Like, if you don't have a budget, then work on that. But if you have $10,000 to start and promote your podcast, which is a lot of money, but not that much to make a podcast go and be worth it. Like, are you willing to spend, 40, 50 hours a week really cranking away trying to make this thing into a business, or should you just go buy a snow cone truck and build a route at the same time, right? And I'm not making fun of snow cone. I'm like, no shit. Like they have a lot of great brands that do that, and you like have all these people that are so excited to see you and all these things. A podcast is a terrible idea in most cases, and so I say I don't care what your idea is. Is are you going to work hard, harder than your competition, and understand that your competition is Jason Bateman, and these guys absorb a lot of attention, and then you go to YouTube, or like it's so adorable, like when people are like, why don't you go to Patreon? And I'm like, first off, Patreon has a history of getting between you and your listener, and second, you look at Patreon and what people actually make on their podcasts, it's not that great. And third, why don't you just go to my PayPal link and put in $5? You can support me, be my patron right now. And it's like, oh well, so these things they're enormously hard, and I paint a fair picture of what it looks like, because to find a brilliant, that's why I celebrate your success with just this aspect of what you do, because you found a way to work within the model, do something you're clearly passionate about, and rally an audience. And I think it's hilarious when you publish like the stupid stuff people say to you all the time, because that is also one of the, you're taking a negative byproduct and turning it into something positive, because it's easy to lose sight of that and really get your feelings hurt, because there's people that say really mean things on the internet to me when I make my stuff, when you make your stuff. It's a crazy thing. But what are your thoughts in general on the challenge of trying to, like, I love when people are like, oh, how do you monetize? Like, well, first off, you got to be good, and then you have to be able to be worth people's time. Mr. Beast. So just today in the news, Spotify, I guess, announced they were cutting some shows. Yes, because an $80,000 or $100,000 a year lift for them to pay you, and however many yous there are in that you said Mr. Beast has all kinds of employees. And so if you're bringing in $250,000 a year, heck, you go watch a Shark Tank video, right? Some of these guys are doing $1 million plus in sales before they even go ask for money, right? So I just want to shut up and just throw some of these things out there. But when you look at how hard it is to squeeze out money, and by the way, if you've got 1 million people watching your show and you're on Spotify and they're paying you because you're a Spotify show and you're getting $100,000 a year, maybe you ought to take that thing somewhere else. And Mr. Beast doesn't need anybody, right? He has an audience now, and they have to come to him with a sweet offer. Otherwise, he can be like, not interested.
That is true. So I'll start at the end and work backwards. So
Okay.
the famous, so look, I listen to sports talk radio here because I live in Philly and we're passionate about our 4 sports teams.
Yeah.
And they had Jason Kelsey, who's the starting center for the Philadelphia Eagles, on there, and he has a podcast with his brother Travis Kelsey, who plays for the Kansas City Chiefs. And they had Paul Rudd on, and apparently the Paul Rudd guest spot was a surprise for Travis's birthday. Well, Jason was supposed to like do a bunch of prep and figure out what questions he should ask and all that. And apparently Jason just, I'm surprised they even do the podcast in season. That seems kind of weird to me since they're so busy.
Yeah.
But he didn't prepare, and Paul Rudd came on, and they just had a really great time with the 3 of them. Now, apparently, I mean, and Angelo Cataldi, who is like the morning, ringleader here in Philly, he was singing the praises of that, and he's been in radio for 30 plus years. So so it's like, okay, well, why is that so successful, right? It's because you have 3 superstar people,
Right.
all like talking candidly on a podcast, for like an hour or however long. I haven't listened to it yet, but it's a part of. I remember getting my backup. I guess it was in like 2015 or so, when all these famous people were starting to get into podcasting. Like Paula Dean had her own podcast, and it was like all these people, and I'm like, wow, like, they're really going to mess it up for all the independent people, because who are you going to listen to? The person that's like, I already have, that has an audience and is famous, right, and it lives in probably a much more interesting life than like every other podcast. For every 100 podcasters or 1,000 podcasters, there's like one celebrity that's living an awesome like experience that can bring something, and they probably have a producer, right?
Yeah.
And they probably have somebody who's writing things out and putting the show together for them, so they're showing up and delivering on that. Plus, they're famous. They already have an audience. Joe Rogan had a huge audience before, or not even an audience, just people knew who he was
Yeah,
before he
yeah.
ever started a podcast, right? And
Right.
it kind of skews how people think about podcasting as a whole. And then you see like a lot of these comments, like we were talking about the nasty comments, like, oh, you only have 5,000 like subscribers, you'll never
Yeah.
get anywhere because, and it's just some random person that just happened to stumble upon your video that's like,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
I don't believe anything you're saying because you only have 5,000 subscribers. Like, I could go
Yeah.
pay for subscribers, but that's not building a community. That's not building a bond with the people that watch my stuff. And honestly, I mean, at this point, like I don't even have 10,000 subscribers. I'm 9,500 as of this weekend. And I'm making enough money that I feel confident that like it's going to continue to grow. Things go in waves. You can actively see it when you look at and I'm not a big channel by any means, but you can actually see it in the analytics where it's like, oh, August is going pretty good. And then people start going back to school and like life starts taking over. So, there's a bit of a dip there, but then things start to ramp up, by the middle of September into October. And then when winter break hits and everything just goes crazy. So it's, things go in waves and you will only see that once you do it, right? So going back to, should you have like you had $10,000, should I start a snow cone business or snow cone truck or a podcast? If you have the itch to share something inside of you, you don't need $10,000 to start a podcast to make it interesting, right? Like you got to get, as you said, and as many people before you have said, you got to get good first, right? And the only way to do that is put in the reps. Keep doing it over and over and over and over again, right? I've been in probably getting closing in on 2,000 videos at this point total, plus all the podcast episodes. It's like 478 or something like that. Plus I've done other shows, so there's been like, plus all the interviews I've been on, like shows like yours, Peter. So so it's there's you have to get good at it. I know, like, so an example from my family business, my dad's been kind of pushing, like, oh, start run a podcast for us for Pardo Fleet Solutions in the trucking industry. We get all these interviews and stuff like that, and I keep going back to, look, I'm not the truck guy. You are the truck guy. I'm talking to my dad, like, you're the one that needs to go and be the host, right? You have those connections. You have a much deeper understanding of the trucking industry and your heartbeat on it than I may ever have. And that's just me being real, because I know what my lane is. I know what I'm really good at. And that's just not something that I've ever had to, like, I know enough to be dangerous. But the thing is the difference between me and him is he could talk about it for days. I would have to do a lot of more preparation, and it would also be draining to me to have to go through those hoops to be able to talk on trucks in the trucking industry, right? Versus him, who already knows because he's already in it. Like, he lives, breathes, and eats it. So if you're, when you're talking about like, what do I do with that $10,000? You can start a podcast about snow cone trucks, the snow cone truck industry, right? You don't have to be great at interviewing people. You don't have to be great at any of this technical stuff. You literally have a phone. You have a built-in podcasting, platform in your pocket, right? Like it's right there. Get out and do it. A great example of this is a friend of mine, Tim Jennings, here in South Jersey. He runs a company called Telecorp. He also does, I think it's like, morning walks with Tim or something like that, where he literally just takes his phone and puts it on like a selfie stick and he walks with it, walking and talking 10 minutes conversation, and he posts it on YouTube or on Facebook. It might be on YouTube, but I know that it's definitely on Facebook. So the connections that you get from doing the podcast is far outweighs, and relationships far outweighs anything that you're going to get in monetary, usually right out of the gate. Looking for money, $5, send me $5 versus like doing a Patreon thing. I totally agree. Patreon is, you don't want them to be the gatekeepers. I wouldn't want them to be the gatekeepers either. There's a lot of other ways to do the monetization thing. They're not necessarily as easy. It'll take you some time to set up, maybe learning some things, or finding and paying somebody to set it up for you. But at the end of the day, you will own that email address. You will own that relationship versus sending them to Patreon. And I personally have only supported a couple people on Patreon. And those relationships, that supporting was just a couple of bucks, and I didn't even go to look at the extra content because
Right.
it's another
Right.
platform for me to have to go to,
Oh,
right? If it's in
it's so
podcast,
much.
it's in my
Yeah.
Apple Podcast. If it's a YouTube video,
Yeah.
it's in YouTube. If I don't really want to have to go somewhere else
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
that back end, to get that stuff. So, um, I think that, and when you compare the $5, give me $5 versus even just watching the ads on YouTube, like that, it'll take so many,
Oh my
like
gosh.
an impossible amount of views from that one person to equal
Yeah.
that $5.
We cannot say this enough. If you have someone that you love that is doing something in the creative area thing, just buy them lunch or slide $10 in their pocket or go crazy. Like I've got a guy that loves what I do and he's like, bam, $300. I got $300 here for you. Bam. Don't care what else you do. Don't need to. And you find those people. Another dude, he sent me a check for $1,000. These things happen on a regular basis and you cobble that into something. And they're like, my best friends, they all say, don't you dare quit. Because it's hard. It's hard out here. You know this.
I
And like,
know.
don't you dare quit. Because what would I give to be like you, to be free, to go out and do these things and talk to these people? I mean, I put it on Facebook today. I got to just pitch Anne Margaret to be on the show. Who cares if she doesn't? I mean, like, I care if she does it or not, but it's already such a win, and the value that comes in that and all the people that come with it. The fact that like you get to I haven't figured out how to do it yet, but I'm going to have Rick Beato on my show one of these days, right? I've seen him face to face. We've never had a chance to really chat, but if I put him in front of me, I'll get him on the show, right? And even if it isn't Rick Beato, it'll be Tim Pierce or someone else in that world, because I can play in that world now. But it's taken me shit 8, 9, 10 years to get to this point where I can compete, and it can't be about the money first. You should have a product that you want to sell. Like you have your services, I have mine, and on occasion the show creates that. But boy, the marketing aspect, the PR aspect, all of the values that come back from a show. I always tell my friends that are like, we think our company, our trucking company, should start a show, and then I'm like, you type in on the internet here, like best trucking podcasts, and once you find that list, and who knows how it's curated, you go here, talking CDL. Why didn't you take that person and sponsor their show? And I bet you for a song, you can title sponsor that thing. Way less than like a year's worth of news press releases, if you even do those, right? And have them do it. And obviously you want to like what they do, but you also don't want to like put your finger on them. And so you're just like, look, go do that. And then the other thing I always suggest to my business people, and this is just a free tip, you're welcome to do it, get on a podcast like mine where I can rotate like you and I can co-host with somebody else anytime, right? I'm always willing to do that. I'm like, go pick your dream clients and let's invite them to come on a show with me. And now you have access. Well, that's valuable to you. Now you're talking to your client in a softer way, or potential client in a softer way. And it becomes a sales driving tool. Use your podcast in other ways to find value. I want to go back to Rick Beato and Tim Pierce, because they did a talk. Rick did a nationwide tour, and by that, like 12 cities. But he came to LA, so I went to go see him. And he and Tim talked for quite a bit of time on, he's like, look, these guys are huge YouTubers. And they're like, we become slaves to YouTube because we'll put a new video up, we spend all this time, spend this money, employ someone. And then you look at the metrics and you're like, what is going on with this video? And you have to, and there's a great channel I love. It's about running. And the guy has to put titles that have really little to do with what's in the video to make the video go. And so he'll tease you with something that isn't true. And then you go in and you listen. And I still love the videos and I want to support the guy. But they're talking about like the stupid thumbnail, the stupid title, instead of like the incredible work that Tim Pierce or all of these musicians do. So there's all of these different aspects to go into what we do, and finding that value. It's such an important thing, because yes, you grab your phone and do a show for fun. But if you really want to get professional, you have to invest some money in gear. What does that mean? What am I going to get out of it? A lot of frustration, but also, man, so many of my friends these days that I hang out with are because of my show. And what's more valuable than life?
Yeah, yeah. So the investment of time, right, is
Mm-hmm.
huge. One thing, if I could go back and start over, I would have focused a lot more time on recording more episodes, and marketing the show a lot more than, I don't want to say wasting my time, but spending my time in editing, thinking that like, oh, if I make it sound amazing, it's going to like go that
Yeah.
much further. Um, and to tie that back to, you know, the title and thumbnail and why in YouTube, and why you have to do things that have like very little to do with what the video is actually going to
Yeah.
show or about,
Yeah.
is because you got to think about like who you're competing against. You know, you ideally you want to show up in those 8 videos when you show up on YouTube, right? And that's individualized for every single person. So what my 8 look like is different from your 8. That's different from someone else's 8.
Right.
You know, it's just different. So you got to remember that you're competing against whatever else that person's watching. So if you're watching Mr. Beast, you're watching these other type of videos as well. You're competing against some of the, you know, potentially some of the best YouTubers on the platform that are reaching like hundreds of millions of people globally with their content. So, you know, I think that you know, you just have to really, a lot of times they say like start with the title and then work backwards, you know,
Yeah.
or start with
Yeah.
the thumbnail, and then, you know, that's the idea, and then you start thinking about how can I go about filming this, how can I make it a reality.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's like almost like a Mad Lib, where
Yep.
it's like, you know, this is the thing blank, and this is how it
Yeah.
ended up blank,
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
and you're like filling in the blanks and just
Uh-huh.
changing it
It's
out.
absolutely an ad lib. Yes.
Yeah, I think when we talk about investment of the time, you know, like we said, you got to get good first before you worry about money or anything like that. I like the idea of sponsoring somebody else's podcast as an opportunity. I could tell you a great story. I'll make it short though. About, you know, one of my favorite shows was WDW Today. It was all about Walt Disney World. It got me into podcasting starting in 2004/5 when I first found out about it. And I became friends with all the hosts and everything. They've all since moved on, and there's a whole new crew in there. But they, you know, they ran the show for like a decade, right? So that I'm talking to a battery exhaust. You gotta get yourself a battery a power cable there, man. See, these are the little things that happen that like sometimes, you know, if we don't think every little step through, we can run into. But when it comes to yeah, so they ran this podcast, and they got a sponsor, MEI Mouse Fan Travel, like very early on, and they, you know, they built this symbiotic relationship that, you know, talking with the owner Becky, you know, we became friends over time, and, you know, she's like, look, I'm never going to be a podcaster. She's been a guest on there a handful of times, but I'm never going to be a podcaster. I'm never going to be able to connect with people like they do. So let me let me pump money into them and get business out of that. And
Yeah.
they had like a 10-year like relationship that they had, you know, going for them. So you know, those are the types of things. It's like you see an opportunity, you pick the right horses in the race, and you help them as well, right? Because not only could you sponsor them, I know famously, I believe, you know, John Lee Dumas of Entrepreneur on Fire, like one of his things was getting the sponsors to promote him
Yeah.
as well as him promote, you know, so he had access to more people to get his show in front of more people. And
Mm.
that, I mean, that's a really big thing. Now, going back to the timepiece, you know, like you were saying about the services thing. So in my case, you know, YouTube has kind of changed that for me because I have such a limited amount of time at this point. It's been so compressed that I'm actually like kind of pushing people away from working one-on-one because I
Yeah.
literally just don't have the time between having 2 young kids and the family business, the YouTube channel, and
Uh-huh.
Indie Podcon, which we didn't even bring up here. So
Yeah.
like between these things, like I've had to, like, I want to continue to take things on, but you know, I also want to be available for my family and my kids as much as I possibly can. And in order to do that, you know, it's like, you know, I have to kind of turn away the one-on-one thing. And I might do a group thing at some point, but
Yeah.
it's still like for 1 hour of time, like I can take that 1 hour I have and invest it in the group, right?
Yeah.
Or I could invest it in making a video or two and having a long tail opportunity to make money when I'm sleeping,
Uh-huh.
and not all my videos do incredibly yet, but that's part of just it's a battle of one, right? It's flipping one
Oh,
person at a time to coming
yeah.
in,
Yeah.
and keep coming back. And if you keep doing that, you'll start to gain a lot of traction. So don't discount. Oh, we only have this, or we only have 5 people, 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people. I mean, when you get to a certain point, it's you want to look back and say, oh well, I like, oh, I only have 9,000 subscribers. Like, that's 9,000 people that said yes. Like, that's
Yeah.
like half of the hockey stadium, the
Oh my
people
God.
that said yes,
Yeah.
right? And then and when it comes to YouTube, like, it's more important. Like, subscriber count doesn't really matter anyway. It's
Right.
really about people saying yes and keep clicking, keep watching, keep binging your videos versus somebody else. And that's the thing. So, and there's a lot of other metrics that play into making that happen, and making it sustainable. But and it's not all about like everything's got to be at 100% watch time, 100%. There's like it's very much on a scale.
Yeah.
Everything about YouTube at this point is on a scale.
Yeah, there's again a lot of things to talk about when you say that. And I mentioned your podcons before when you were coming in, so we've often talked to that, and I want to get back into that stuff, but there's just so much fertile ground to cover here.
It's
There's
all right. Indie PodCon we can talk about, and I'll come back on and we'll talk about that
yeah,
another day.
yeah. Well, we'll get to it because I think one of the things we're talking about too is okay. So maybe like okay, so I'm on Rumble, right? I'm not on Rumble for political reasons. I'm on Rumble because it's a platform, and all I've got to do is populate some bubbles, and then boop, it publishes there. And anybody who wants to watch it, they can, and maybe I get paid. I don't make a cent on Rumble because I don't promote it, right? Because at some point, it's like, here's Gab, here's this, here's this, here's. I don't want to publish to 20 different sites, especially if there's no bang there, right? Like everybody's like, just keep nugging away on Instagram, and you'll build it. I don't want to, and it's not true that you can just continue to go back to Instagram. I put funny pictures on there of my cat sometimes, or like the pineapple that we just grew. We grew up, we did the thing, we chopped the top of the pineapple off and put it in the dirt. And so, a couple of those pictures make it up. But you got to pick your fights if you're going to one at a time it, right? And then two at a time it, and hopefully four at a time it. But the ways you can make money are not just because you're talking. Like the talking is the machine, but the other things that can come out of it. Like, do you want to take your show and break it into small pieces and publish it on TikTok or on Snapchat or on the other versions of that are out there? Or do you just build a name? Like, you don't want to do one-on-ones, but maybe you want to do VIP days where you're like, hey, I will help you this for your business. And for that one day, you get me, but you're going to pay $2,000. And the person's like, oh, I'm thrilled. I've seen all your stuff. I love what you do. $2,000 is it? Hell, it costs $10,000 to have a guy talk. You're going to help my business for a full day for 2,000. Okay. And now you're like, well, this is great. I work 10 extra days a year doing this. That's 20 great, And so you can build these businesses by evolving into something that you never even, if someone told, hey, Joe, you're going to have 9,000 people and probably have 10,000 here in a couple of weeks that are paying attention to your goofy Shark Tank videos, you'd be like, yes, I'll take it. You'd be so excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I love about the video content that I do, because otherwise I would feel really, really guilty, honestly,
Yeah.
is that it's educational,
Yeah.
and that the people that don't get it, they're like literally not the person that I'm trying to reach,
Right.
right? And that comes with the territory of all these different products. People are searching for the different products. They have their own set of people that they or set of things that they watch, and they're different,
Yeah.
the different demographics and stuff like that. It's not hyper focused. Yeah, I mean, it's Shark Tank, but not everybody that's searching for that Shark Tank video is hyper focused, right?
Right.
They're into crocheting or something. Like, they're just
Yeah.
they're just different than what we're providing here. So when it comes to when how to focus in on that one or two platforms, like, to me, I want anything I do at this point, I want it to point back to basically YouTube, which sucks because
Yeah.
have one platform to rule them all. It means that one platform could disappear tomorrow or whatever. But I still have my podcast, right? So I
Right.
still have my newsletter. I still have other ways for people to connect with me through Instagram or Twitter. Do I put as much attention and time into those other platforms? Not nearly as much as I'm putting into YouTube, but
Right.
YouTube is very rapidly becoming a pay the bills job for me, which is also why kind of like, okay, I could get people to work with me, but the fact of the matter is like I really love working with I love working with two sets of people. One that's fully established and they're trying to solve a really complicated problem. That's like actually my wheelhouse because the complicated problem involves like technology integration. It involves like all these other aspects to it, right? Versus um, the person that is just trying to get started, right? So, I do the Shark Tank thing. I have people that have businesses, been in restaurant businesses, power washing businesses, like all these different businesses.
Yeah.
But they're also small businesses that like I can't be like, hey, it's $10,000 and this is the package, right? This is what you're
Right.
gonna get. Like it doesn't work that way. It would be awesome if it did, because I'd be like, hey, we get 10 people a year,
Yeah.
and I'll work, I'll structure it and all that. But that's like truthfully, like that's not like what's coming from YouTube for the most part. I have
Right.
some people that want to work with me, but most of them don't haven't even taken the first step yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I wouldn't want to necessarily take that level of money from somebody who's just getting started. That's like saying, like, Pete, I got $10,000. Should I start a podcast or snow clearing truck? Go give it to Joe Pardo.
Go
No,
give it to
that's
Joe Pardo
that's what
first. Yeah.
like beepity 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 beep would tell
Yeah.
you to do, right? Like
Sure.
I'm not gonna put anybody on the bus, but if you know who I'm talking
Yeah.
about, or the type of people that I'm talking about.
Uh-huh.
I don't want you to send me that money, right? I want you to figure it out. I want you to take the time and be obsessive about learning about your business, learning about other businesses out there
Right.
too. And figure and either figure it out for yourself or send me an email if you have a quick question or something, and I'll do my best to get back to you as quick as possible. But I think that it's just really like important for you to get obsessive about learning to solve the problems that you have in your business. And I'm all right with just being that, as I was told, popular business educator.
Yeah.
As I just found out, that's what I'm being called on the internet now.
Good.
A business educator to me, regardless of popular, is everything that I want to do for people, right? And is really bring to the table. Like
Oh man.
I'm not here like shilling. I have some free stuff, free lead magnets like the Avatar Guide and I forget what the other one is off the top of my head. The sales guide, and I think there's also a Shark Tank Ready guide, but like there really is nothing behind that as far as like, yeah, you could hire me, but I honestly I actually took it off my page to
Yeah.
just today. I took it off a few weeks ago and I put it under the contact page to kind of like filter people out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I actually got rid of it. Like I took the page down altogether, just because like if somebody really wants to work with me, they're going to write me a heartfelt letter that
Yep.
I'm going to have to read, and really convince me that like the time I'm going to spend with them is going to be well spent. And
Right.
it's still gonna cost money, but like
Yeah.
I just don't have the time to do all that. So when it comes to the TikToks, the YouTube shorts, the Instagrams, again, funnel things back to where you make the money, right?
Yeah.
Funnel people back to where you want them to be.
Right.
Ultimately, they're on the YouTube. I'm funneling them to my email list, right? That, and then that also pushes them into like listening to the podcast that I control 100% of.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
and only a certain percentage of people are going to make that happen. But I
Yeah.
mean, I get like 1 to 2 every day to every other day of people joining the email list. So I mean, that's to me that's just awesome. And
Yeah.
when I'm ready when I have more time to put into a group session, I think that it'll just be that much easier to get people ready to go without filling up their inbox every day. And like,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to, I don't even have time to create those
Oh my gosh.
products
Yeah.
and things, the digital products and stuff. Like, just learn the stuff. And like I said, maybe I'll do a group thing. Maybe it'll just be like a month, and it'll be like four 1 hour sessions or something, and we'll work on specific things. I just honestly, I've been so busy, I haven't had the time
That's
to
awesome though,
like
to
get
be
it
that
out there.
busy. I mean, that means you're being a present dad. 'Cause I know you're all like half of your pictures are with your kids. You're always doing stuff
Yes,
with them,
that's
you know.
it is. I mean, it's all about, if it's not about them, like what is it really about? Like I don't
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I love technology, and technology isn't free. But like to a certain extent, like I can deal with what I have. I don't really spend a whole lot of money other places. It's mostly in technology. So,
Mhm.
uh, I don't know. To me, it's really all about them and getting them prepared for the future, and making so many memories that we have to go back and look at the pictures and videos because we can't possibly remember all of it. I think
Mhm.
that, to me, stands out from my childhood, comparatively speaking, where like I do, at least in my mind, remember a lot of
Mhm.
the things that happened, because there wasn't as many as I want to create for them.
Yeah. There's so many things I want to ask you about,
Yeah, go
but I
ahead.
think I want to go down this road too because there is a belief. Okay, so like I think you and I both have at least at some time subscribed to TubeBuddy. Right now, I'm going through Video IQ, which helps you improve. And this is not me pitching anything. I'm just saying that these are services that we employ to try to like optimize our YouTube channels, right? And then I find that like it's great for those guys. It saves me some time, but like I just don't know the keywords do anything, or because like I'll go through a video and I'm like, I'm not even going to put any references on the back end of the of the channel because they just don't get clicked on. And so why am I spending even 5 minutes doing that for every video I've got? And then you go into the boards and you talk to people, and it's just like the same basic advice. And so I often think, why am I spending 30, 40 bucks a month on Video IQ when I'm not like I can match the growth that they're offering. So what are they actually offering me? They're giving me tasks to do that aren't really improving my channel. So do I just spend that 40 bucks on ads, And that people have a problem with ads. And I'm like, and I'm not saying the I am iTunes podcast promoter guy. I mean, like, go on to Bing or Google or any of these platforms, YouTube specifically, and just spend 40 bucks a month on ads, and I bet I would see more growth.
So when it comes to TubeBuddy, I haven't used vidIQ. I think I installed it at one point, but uninstalled it. I do pay for TubeBuddy. I pay for the lowest end package, which I signed up before I had 1,000 subscribers, so it was only like $4.50 a month.
Mhm.
To me, for what I use it for, I think that I mean, right at this point, I basically use it for one thing at this point, and it's for creating the keywords, right? And seeing
Mhm.
which keywords are, because of like Shark Tank and stuff, like which keywords should I also be like popping into the
Mm.
keywords box.
Mhm.
And that's mostly it. Now I do like searches and use like the barometer on the top right hand side that tells
Yeah.
you like, oh, this, this is a potential hole right here. But I mean, once you get good at it, like you can kind of see that for
Yeah.
yourself. I mean, like you just do the search and like you see what's there, see what how many views each of those videos have. And get a good idea of like, okay, if I create a thumbnail that's more eye catching than these, I can reach, rank for search. And but ranking for search is tough because
Yeah.
fads fade, and unless you're like how to tie shoes and you get the number one search result, like
Yeah.
it's tough. But there's a lot of little things like you could look at, when you do that search, you look at it and say, okay, how long are those videos, right? Like if it's like to do this one thing and every video is like 5 minutes, can you explain it in two? Oh,
Right.
if you can explain it in two without all the nonsense of like, make sure you like and subscribe. Guess what? You asking people to like and subscribe. I think, like, I know, like, as an example, Mr. Beast is always like, like, subscribe to this, hits the subscribe button or whatever. Um, I don't think any of that matters.
Yeah.
I really don't. I mean, as we talked about, the subscriber count doesn't really matter. It's mostly vanity. And I can tell you, like, so I have 9,500 subscribers, but my returning viewers in the last month is like 26,000. So
Yeah.
like I would have
Huge.
26,000 subscribers if they all hit the subscribe button. But
Right.
like once you get past 1,000 and 4,000 watch hours, you're monetized.
Right.
It's a vanity number, right? So people are going to subscribe, and as they choose to subscribe. It's not really, me reminding them, like every other video is reminding them
Oh
to
my
subscribe.
gosh.
It's just part of the
Yeah.
platform. To me, it's almost like, that's why you start seeing like these, like, little animation gifs, right? That like click, and so it clicks the subscribe button, so they could stop saying it and
Right.
just, having that visual cue at least. Because you're just like creating dead air at that point, and that's not good usually for people's watch retention time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think, put it this way, I wouldn't be spending $40 a month on vidIQ or TubeBuddy. I
Right.
love TubeBuddy, but and I do watch vidIQ's videos on YouTube from time to time, educational videos on YouTube. But I think that $40 a month would be better spent. You could try ads, but I don't know that, like, I honestly, I've never done a YouTube ad, so I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
And I mean, doing it, I definitely wouldn't spend it in Facebook, because I don't think that you're going, like, ever since iOS changed, it's been rough going for pretty much anybody with ads, because they're
Mhm.
not as targeted as they once were. Yeah, I don't know that $40 would be well spent there. I also almost would say, what could you do to invest in the actual video to get it to make it a better video? Long form content on YouTube is tough, but the
Yeah.
ones that do it, they get long, they can have long tails, right? Like, I do the interviews with the people who have been on Shark Tank, and truth be told, like, that hour that I commit to that interview it's tough for me to schedule it. Number one, because I got to work with
Right.
their schedule as well.
Yep.
It's also tough because that in that hour I could make 2 or 3 Shark Tank videos that will each get out of the gate like 2 to 3, maybe 4,000 views.
Right.
The
Yeah.
interview is going to get like out of the gate maybe 400 views,
Right.
maybe. There's a lot more ads in those videos, but to me, that's my equivalent of authority building. Like, when people are like, no, nobody comes on your show, shut up. Like, okay, well, why? I have like almost 40 people that have been on the show. A lot of these
Yeah.
people are coming on the show right after they've been on Shark Tank. And I have a couple of people now that have watched my channel to prepare to go on Shark Tank.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, like, it's important, I think. Plus, it's also almost like a thank you, for watching thank you for watching the channel, to both my audience, but also to the person who, took the time to watch my show and was on Shark Tank, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's helpful in some ways, and I feel like there's a lot longer of a tail. Like, when I get to 100,000 subscribers or whatever, like,
Yep.
those videos are gonna have way more like watch time and views going forward.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to, like, what can you do to make the best video you can, and if you could take $40 and invest it in, I don't know, going on location with that guest, right? Doing something, maybe instead of interviewing
Yeah.
the person and asking the same questions that they've answered 1,000 times, right? Like, take that $40 and go do an experience with that. For like, hey, we took Mr. Beast to an escape room, but it's like the craziest escape room ever, and there's like
Yeah.
fire, and the room's on fire in the thumbnail or something. Like, that's gonna get clicks, right? So
Yep.
it could still be an interview, but it just needs, doing something that's different. Because unless
Yeah.
you're famous, right, or you've built up being famous in a different way, it's really hard, because only a small percentage of a small percentage of a small percentage are going to watch long form interviews
Yeah. Yeah.
from you.
Yeah.
Unless they really love your guest, but your guest ain't there next week. I'm not going to be on next week's episode here, I don't think. But You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah,
it's one of those things where you got to
it's
like
true.
really think about like
Yeah,
what can I do that's going to stand out in a crowded market. But I
right,
mean, YouTube it's only growing.
right.
You know, grandparents are watching YouTube thanks to the
Yep,
pandemic, right? Like
yeah,
40 plus year olds are watching YouTube for all kinds of things.
yeah.
In fact, one of my, who was I just talking to? Bob, one of our contractor friends, family friend. He's like, all I watch pretty much now is YouTube. And he's 60 some years old,
Yeah, right.
you know, and he's like, the documentaries on there are crazy good. Like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff on YouTube. I mean, there's some crazy out
Yeah.
there stuff too, but there's a lot of great educational stuff
It's
out
so
there.
true. Yeah. It's such a great platform in general for that. Like, who hasn't wanted to fix their car, or how do I fix this stupid vacuum cleaner? All of those things, and you would never think that this would be a thing where you could make a living, but you absolutely can. So it is a fantastic thing. By the way, while you were talking, I canceled my Video IQ subscription because I've been meaning to, because it's gonna re up on the November 8th. And I'll say this, I do believe in ads. And I'm talking again, YouTube, Bing, Google. And I think Facebook ads work. Whenever I've used them and I target them, I draw attention. I consider it a billboard. I've considered buying billboard ads, just to create attention so that someone's like, oh, yeah, the Break It Down show. But I need to do it so that my marketing focus is just brand awareness. Like in my hometown, people who don't know me are like, oh, P.J. Turner, you have that show, right? And so how do I grow that into the community next door or in Texas where, I have a bit of an audience for whatever reason. And so you try to like build these things, and maybe you bring in some marketing expertise, but that $40 a month, and you find someone who kind of guides you on what to do. It's all fascinating, man. One of the things I get to do is, one, I rotate these co-hosts, and today's a solo show, but I could easily have someone here talking. And actually, I asked a fellow podcast friend, Brett Allen, to see if he wanted to come on, but he wasn't available. But
Ah,
I know it would have been fun. I do grab my gear, I put it in a backpack, and I have two tripods and some lighting that all I can carry all in my hands, and I can go out of my truck and into someone's house. And last week I was at Marion Ross's house. She's the mom from Happy Days,
oh
and I
wow.
recorded a show at her house with her son. And then Marion popped in for a few minutes, and that's something that Marion's not going to go anywhere. She's not in the condition to travel anymore, right? And so I'm able to go to whoever's house it is, and I live in Southern California, so I can be at someone famous's house in an hour, and I can sit across from them, and they're now the host of me in their house. And it's just a remarkable thing. And then people are like, I see what you do here. Wow, this is really incredible. And that starts those other PR marketing time questions, and like, how do I get involved? What else do you do? And now you're just having these conversations. And I don't know about you, but for me, it's like, do you know anyone who does this? And boy, I know everybody now because of the show.
Yeah, I mean, so when I started podcasting, I did I went down the interview and I was path and I was interviewing. Hey, Sonia, good to see you here. I was interviewing all these different people, and really like the goal for me was like grow my network and grow outside of the trucking industry because I just left my family's business and all that, but it came to a point, I think in like late 2016 or 2017, when yeah, I guess it was like late 2016 that I started to think like, I'm interviewing these people, and it's awesome having those interviews, and I love the connections it's making. But like I was, starting to think like, how is this serving, my business, right? My coaching business,
Right.
and how or coaching consulting business. How am I going like, to me, I don't have any ideas of grandeur, or feelings of grandeur
Right.
of being like Oprah or being like, somebody like Larry King or somebody like that. So for me, it's like I did all these interviews. It was great experience. I got tons of editing experience. I got
Right.
tons of connections and friends like all over the world. In 2.5 years. Um, but how do I go and I take that and now I want the show to be I want to be the focus of the show, right? I want
Mm,
to deliver the education because like I had people on, and that was awesome. But again, like my goal wasn't to be Larry King. So it's like, okay, I need
Yeah.
to reevaluate where I'm at and where I'm headed. And it's funny how like, it took a couple of years to get it right. Though I did win Business Podcast of the Year award in 2017 from podcastawards.com, not just for those interviews, but also at that time or no, actually, no, they were mostly interviews, but I was doing a lot of lessons, and I also did a pre-show at the time. So I would do
Sure.
like talk about like news topics and stuff and relate it back to business. So like a lot of those early things were happening then in 2016 that I've adapted over the years and kind of recycled in. Um, but I feel like when you're looking at um what do I want to create a podcast about? How do I want to, what do I want it to be a reflection of? Do I want it to be my business? I
Yeah.
think that's where you just have to answer some of those questions. Like, well, do the rap so I can get good, and then
Right.
I can start to figure out like, okay, what's the next step for me? Is it continuing interviewing people, getting to have all these awesome conversations with celebrities? And I because I also did a Disney podcast for a little while where we got to interview a lot of celebrities,
Yeah.
Disney legends in that show. Um, which was cool, but it wasn't to me. It wasn't serving it wasn't serving my consulting
Mm.
business. So it's like, okay,
Hmm.
I really need to hone it in here and bring it back to what's important. And I think all along, like the most important thing, which I'm have gotten to really play the role of, is just business educator. Just recently, oh man, I know sneezes are bad for attention, so I'm trying not to
Yeah.
sneeze.
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
But yeah, I just think that you have to give a lot of thoughts at, and it is really cool though to have those experiences, and even getting to be not long after I started doing the Shark Tank stuff, I got invited to the house of one of the people that was just on Shark Tank,
yeah.
and because he lives in Pennsylvania, so I went over there and I got to record an interview with him at his house. To me, what was more important about that interview, I mean, it was awesome. It was great experience and all that. But what's important is it established me as a real person outside
Yeah.
of these four walls, and it established like somebody thought I was trustworthy enough to come out to their house,
Yeah.
based on a video I made about their Shark Tank pitch. So,
Yeah.
I think that doing it is really great for as long
Mm.
as you're doing it with purpose. And somebody you know Kamanzi, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so Kamanzi reached out to me when I just released my first book in 2015, and he reached out to me and he said, "Joe, why did you release your book as a free download out of the gate? Like it eventually, it was a paid book, but out of the gate, I was like, I wanted to have a number one book on Amazon and blah blah blah. So I did as a free download, and I achieved that. I got the number one in I think it was like self help on the free side. But he's like, what? How is that going to help you? And to me, I was like, look, I'm just trying to gain exposure, get as many people to learn about me and the platform, which was still in its infancy at the time, and really had a lot of growing pains through that time. But I think the most important thing there was like doing it with purpose, right? And he was
Hmm.
he was satisfied with the reason I gave of like, okay, this is the purpose of why I did it this way, right? But if I had just said, well, I just like I want to be number one, or I just to get my book out there,
Right.
um, it wasn't just about the book; it was about the whole
Mm.
platform, right? And what I was doing at the time. So my books after that were not free when they came out, and that book is not free today. But it's it was an experiment because I was still relatively young in
Yep.
my platform
Yeah.
and in the growth. So yeah,
It's can I keep you for like 2 or 3 more minutes because I want to ask you
as long
one
as you
more.
need me, man.
Okay.
All I
Okay.
got
So
after this is a run, so I'm good.
well, let's get you running soon. So I'll just put these together into one thing you can riff on. Um, One thing is like what you've done is created an opportunity for Shark Tank to go, oh man, because they're always trying to get you to go to like, hey, don't forget to go to sharktank.com and watch the outtake or whatever it's going to be. And you've become that thing where it's like, hey, don't forget to go check out Super Joe Pardo, part of the Shark Tank family, and they pitch you. So, would you give up your freedom and take a dollar amount from those guys to be part of that network? And I guess that's that question. And the other thing is have you evolved how you do the show with in mind? Hey, I can get these guys who pitch on my show next. And so I got to make sure I don't, like how I say things. I've got to be, and I'm not saying don't be authentic, but I'm saying you've got to find a way to word things so that you're not like unpalatable to them. And then just close with, if you have any question for me, because I know I've been hammering you, then I'm glad to take those things on.
So is there a dollar? There is potentially a dollar amount if the if the agreement was right. It had to be the right. It would have to be the right deal. It had to be a win-win, I think.
Right.
And because if it's not right, like I would have to put a lot of things on other things on pause, right? And I'm not necessarily willing to move across the country to be in Los Angeles if that was important to them. So I think that there's definitely an opportunity, but the dollar amount's got to be it's got to be right, and I would have to be most likely staying here in Jersey. If I had to fly back and forth a little bit, I'd be willing to sacrifice that, but it's got to be. I mean, we're talking like over, at least six figures like over six figures starting to
No,
make
for
it
sure.
worth
Yeah.
the time and the effort. And then, depending on how many hours we're talking about, what I could do to commit to still,
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to abandon my YouTube channel.
Right.
I wouldn't want to sacrifice the future for a short-term gain.
Yep.
I mean, obviously it could open up other doors, you never know who you're going to meet and stuff like that. But like, you never know who's watching right now, right?
Yeah.
And I've seen that not only with my fellow podcasters, but also with the Shark Tank. People have been on Shark Tank, so
That's right.
they, it's like Peter from Mountain Flow Eco Wax was like, yeah, I did a show in Denver. And I didn't know that somebody from Shark Tank was there, and they reached out a month later and was like, oh yeah, we saw your booth at the blah 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 show. And he's like, oh wow, I didn't even know you were there.
Yeah.
And we'd love to have you come on Shark Tank. So you just never know who's watching. As far as the Shark Tank, like they definitely know I exist. I mean, obviously or not obviously, but they haven't reached out to me specifically. But I do know that they know that I exist.
Let me jump in and say this. If you
Yeah.
run a major TV show and there's someone who's building an audience based upon your stuff, you are missing an opportunity, to take someone like Joe and work together. Like, it's crazy. These people who do all of these things and they build six-figure incomes without you. You need to go grab these guys because they're getting attention that you guys are leaving on the floor. Okay, I'm sorry. I had to
No,
interrupt.
yeah, well, yes and no.
It's
Yes
the
and no.
marketplace.
Yes and no, right? Because like you look at a company like Disney, right? They have all the Disney bloggers out there.
Mhm.
And they have blogging events and they they'll wine and dine them and all that, but it's I mean, with that said, they do have the Disney Moms panel, and those are paid positions that are like
Right.
Disney bloggers. I guess they're bloggers.
Yeah.
That get elevated dads and moms, but it's called Disney Moms. At least for now, and it's the Disney moms that do blogging, and it's their opportunity. It's their opportunity to connect with the the community, and as well as D23. So D23 is their conference every year that they do a bunch of announcements and things like that. And so they, that was them getting in on like, hey, people are hosting these conferences around Disney. Let's get some of that money, and all that. So, do I think that Shark Tank is missing out by not having me? I actually don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is because they have other channels on YouTube. They have the ABC channel that posts like a little clip, but then they also have Sony Entertainment Pictures that posts the whole pitch uninterrupted and on there, right? And
Sure.
those will get 1 to 5 million views most cases.
Yeah.
And then now there's something called, as of like 8 months ago, there's something called Shark Tank Global that
Mm.
post not just Shark Tank, but like all the different Shark Tank brands,
Yeah.
the Dragon's Den, the Shark Tank Australia, and
Yeah.
all that under that channel, complete pitch, uninterrupted. And I mean, it decimated some of my videos where it's
Yeah.
like the highest viewed video on my channel was the Lark water bottle. And once they posted that on the I think it was on the global channel, it just died.
Yeah.
I mean, it might get some views now, but it doesn't get nearly as many views as it once did. So
Fair
um
enough.
I feel like if they wait, they'll wait till like if they were going to do something or wanted to do something, they would have already reached out, right? Or they just do nothing and they wait till a point where like my goal is to get so big because I have a lot of other ideas that I want to integrate into the channel.
Sure.
Not just reaction content, but like other business related content that's, maybe in the vein of Mr. Beast, but like how I do go about doing things and solving problems for businesses. And I've already done a video like that where I was supposed to be a TV show for Biz TV, for Biz TV. And that kind of fell apart, that deal. But the pilot got done, and then I've chopped it down for YouTube to be, so it didn't have commercial breaks and stuff. So I at a certain point, it's like I feel like the opportunity is there for me to be bigger than what Shark Tank would have to offer.
Yeah,
in
I hope
general.
so. Yeah, I think
Like,
you're right about that. Yeah.
and I hate saying that because like I'm not trying to bite the hand that feeds or one of the hands that feed, but the fact of the matter is the opportunity is there. It's just
Yeah.
a matter of me getting the time to be able to go and film those things and make
Mhm.
it big enough to just all of a sudden like light fuel on fire, like the whole thing on fire even more
Yeah.
than it already is. And
Yeah.
when it comes to the wording, so look, I
Yeah.
integrity is huge to me. As it is, there's been a couple of times where I'm like, if you read between the lines, you'll see that I'm not thrilled with what I'm watching, or I don't
Yeah. Yeah.
believe everything that I'm, watching.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to like, because I've gotten accused a few times of being like, oh, you just say everything's all great and awesome and everything. It's like, no, it's not. But the thing is like I'm getting to see 8 minutes of an hour plus long pitch, right? And
Right.
answers to questions that was edited, and I have to assume because from what I've been told that those answers are truthful and that they are they're not edited to make anybody look stupid
Right.
or anything like that. But there's there's one example that comes to mind where the person's like, oh, I tried to apply for a patent and we're working on getting it. And then, like, actually, there's a couple of examples where afterwards I go to AliExpress and I look it up and I'm like, this is the exact same product.
Yeah.
You didn't do anything. Like, it's a hustle, which is fine. That's perfectly great. I think that, the drop shippers out there, you're doing great. You're taking that risk. You're finding that next big product and doing the drop ship thing. Awesome, right? More power to
Yeah.
you. But being on Shark Tank, like there's a reason that the royalty deal comes through a lot, right? Is because they also know that this is probably not patentable or that you own the patent or will get the
Right.
patent. And if that's the case, I want to make money now while it's still a thing until it's not a thing. And then it's whatever, we just move on, but at least I got my money back.
Yeah. I've got a friend that has he's got a portal that he's building where it's going to be patented things that the inventor's like, look, I create these things that have value, but I'm not a marketer. And unless the idea gets caught up and bought up right away, I'm going to go on to the next thing. Cause what I do is come up with great ideas. And like he had one where, like when you want to put oil in your car, back when people used to do this on a regular basis, then no one does that anymore now. But he's like, I have a lid that would go on anything, and the lid would be the funnel. And I'm like, God, that's brilliant. Just like boom, and like it's pouring in. You pull a thing up, boom, done. But there's like this whole platform he's building for like, hey, if you see something in here from all these different inventors that have signed on that you think you can take to market, there's an exchange of value of some kind or another. And off you go. Like there's just so many opportunities to do these things. It's It's really incredible, and I love that you're doing it. And you're right. I've watched some of your videos, and I'm like, that idea, and I don't want to mention any of them. Just go watch Joe's channel, and you'll see some ones, and you're like, yeah, do we need that? Probably not. Is some mom going to buy that? Maybe there's a business there. I don't want to take any more of your time. If you want to ask me a question, I'm glad to fire back at you. Otherwise, man, just thanks for coming on. I can't wait to have you on again.
Real quick, so a couple things.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I love doing, when especially when you see me post those negative comments and things like that, is if you've ever noticed, I don't generally post links to the videos or
Right.
to my channel, and that's by design because I
Sure.
want people to go and search for my name. Because I want YouTube to know that people are searching for my name.
Right.
And so it's the little things like that make a big difference. So like even with your content, like thinking about like the ads and stuff like that, like I wouldn't want to send them to the YouTube channel, right? Because I don't want too much external traffic going to
Mm-hmm.
YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
I want people to like have to work for it a little bit so that they, which you shouldn't, but at the same time you do because you also want the right people watching it, and you don't want like, hey, I know Pete, I know Joe, I'm gonna click on that video. I watch
Mm-hmm.
10 seconds of it. Oh, cool, there's Joe, there's Pete, and
Yeah.
click.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll catch it later. And it's like, okay, well, great. You just told YouTube this video, it was not good.
Right.
So don't go to my video if you're not going to watch it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why you won't see me generally post any videos, links or things like that. If I do, it's to my website. And then once you're on my website, you can click on it from there.
Sure.
But you want to kind of put that wall in there because I want people to search. You want people to look up, look you up. And then the other thing is, so when it comes to YouTube, how do you feel that you're doing on the YouTube side of it? Are you monetized yet?
I've been monetized,
Oh,
but the
okay.
money is well, it's basically spent pushing the podcast out, so I don't have to do that work at all. So I have guys that
Mm.
do that for me, and that's basically what the YouTube channel does, right? It covers that aspect of it, and then the rest of the money that I get through my PayPal subscriptions, that money basically goes into putting gas into the truck to go to Arizona to do a show or buying ads. And you know how this goes. Buying equipment. Apparently, I got a couple of old batteries here that aren't going to hold the charge anymore. I got to rotate those out, right? And so you get 10 batteries, and you're like, these ones suck. Throw them away or recycle them or whatever. Yeah. So that's how I see the YouTube part. And I wish it would grow faster, but like you said, I got a long form show, and some people are going to get it, some people aren't. And if not YouTube, where do you go? Like, you put that on iTunes, you're just wasting your time because there's no worse business partner than iTunes or Apple Podcast. Like, it's just a waste of time. Yes, they have a lot of ears or anything. You got to get them now out of Apple Podcast and over to wherever you want them to go. And so
While they're
YouTube
doing
is,
something else, listening, because they're
yeah,
they're likely not just sitting there listening, right?
yeah,
They're watching. They're watching, or I'm sorry, listening while they're like mowing the lawn or
right,
having a, driving or in the
yeah,
shower
yeah,
or on a train where they don't
yeah,
have access to the internet or their phone to give their attention. So
yeah,
getting people to do any kind of call to action is really tough. That's why I always
so,
like people are like, oh, what about affiliate deals? You can make money with that, and I'm like,
ugh,
no, I'm
no,
I'm not gonna like unless you're paying me up front
yeah,
to a
yeah,
certain degree to do it. Like it's still a lot of work
yeah.
to do those ads.
I'm not going to
Um,
be mattress salesman of the year for your company for the amount of money. I mean, to do that job, if you were going to, Casper or Purple, whoever it's going to be, if I'm going to sell mattresses, you're going to have to compensate me for my time and attention, learning, like all these things that, like if you were a salesperson, that's what you would get. I need an expense account, and then I'll go sell your mattresses. But yeah, just like on the chance that someone's like, I need a mattress today, like, no thanks. And then the money had better be there in the affiliate part too, not just like a
yeah.
dollar a mattress or something.
So it was Jared Polin, who's actually from here in Philly, was talking about this on the Graham Stephan Iced Coffee Hour about how what company was it? He had an affiliate deal with, I want to say it was Squarespace, like early on,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and he chose to not do an affiliate deal. so in the beginning, and he got paid up front. They're like, okay, we'll do it, blah blah blah. Got paid up front, made a little bit of money with it. And then a couple months into it, they were like, well, we're restructuring our
Uh-huh.
whole affiliate deal. And he was like, oh, well, what's the deal? And they're like, look, you definitely want to take the affiliate deal. And he made so much more money from that than what he was making through them just paying him. So
Yeah.
I think that affiliate deals can make sense if you actually have an audience that is going to take action, and you actually have like the right target for that
Mm,
taking action
right.
people. Then it can make an awful lot of sense. But I think that's where a lot of the big disconnect comes from, is people don't necessarily have the right audience, and they haven't trained their audience to take action,
Yeah.
right? From what they do. And like I was talking to my wife about this the other day, and I'm like, with the amount of views that I get through Shark Tank reaction videos coming out on the night that the show airs, I'm if I had a sponsorship like, 10 to, I mean, each of these videos get 10, 20, 30, 40,000 views.
Yeah, you
Some of
do
them a
great work.
lot less
Yeah.
than others, right? Some of them only get a couple thousand views. Um, it's like, how much money am I leaving on the table by not having a sponsor that, like, sponsoring those videos with somebody? Is it $2,000 a video, $3,000 a video? Like, you only have
Yeah.
to do a handful of those, and it's like, I don't have to worry about anything. I ain't got nothing else to worry about,
Right.
like,
Right.
um, but that right partner hasn't
Mm,
come around. And I have to be able to stand behind whatever, like I said before, integrity is really important to me. So I have to be able to stand behind whatever we're going to be pitching.
yeah.
I had to actually like it. It's funny. Like when I first got started, I had a couple people reach out about sponsoring the show, and then I haven't gotten a single one since. It's like
Yeah.
so weird.
It is weird.
Well, the one of them was like for fake money,
Uh-huh.
like acting money.
Yeah.
And I'm like, nobody's gonna buy that from a Shark Tank video. Like, why?
Yeah.
Like, the only good thing about that is I would feel okay with it, because it's you're not buying fake money unless you had a reason to have it, right? Like
Sure.
for acting purposes or video purposes or something. But
Right.
maybe there would be. I don't know. But yeah, that I let that deal kind of like just go by the wayside. And at the time, I think I had like 200 subscribers or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
the channel was like far from growth. I
I'll
mean, it
I'll
was before I even started really growing.
I'll tell you what I have done a couple of times, and this is not a reliable thing, and it is absolutely, a lottery ticket, but I've had a couple opportunities to get in early, like, "Hey, would you have us on your show? And we'll give you some shares in the company." And this is an
Mm,
established entrepreneur who knows how to exit companies. This is not like Craig and Jeff, like, and Craig and Jeff, I talked to those guys, but like, yeah, okay, this is interesting. And sometimes you got to take a stab at something early. Be like, remember when I had this person on before they were nobody? Oh, you don't? Well, here's the video, that kind of thing. And so I've got a couple of piles of stock and companies that, you know, they may or may not be worth something someday. But I wouldn't mind doing that, like going long on something, and seeing what happens. Because what's the harm to me? I mean, I'm going to do a show for an hour. They're going to be interesting, and get people excited about it, and maybe it's searchable somewhere. Why not, right? But I don't know if that's the only strategy I'd want to employ. There's a lot of times I get offered like early authors, first bookers, that kind of thing. The the early musicians, I try to have these folks on as often as possible, but I really can't help them. Only thing I can do is give them exposure, give them practice to do an interview, love what they're doing, but then they've got to go back to work building their audience, working clubs if they can even do that. And it is it's funny. People think it's funny how people categorize like what you do. Like, hey, you have a podcast. My friend just wrote a book. He should come on. And I'm like, he really should come on if I want to have him, but he also should like just go halvesies with me on an ad. You buy 100, I'll buy 100, and we'll do that. And then it's only going to let people know that you exist for a short amount of time. It's just not going to sell 1,000 books because you haven't earned that right yet. through your audience, and you don't have an audience. And so then if they get that, then I'm like, yeah, you're willing to invest in yourself and put this money into the show with me, then I'll put the time and effort into doing this thing. But even that is like, I don't really want to ask people for even $100, even if it might help, because I don't know how valuable it is. Like, yes, it will absolutely be seen more. And I absolutely will spend, over an hour trying to put a clip together and then obviously doing the show and everything. But is that worth your time? Maybe. Yeah. No, I don't know. And so I do that sometimes, and it's sort of a way to boost up my ad revenue or my
Mhm.
ad budget. But those are some of the things that are pretty atypical, but I don't believe in them enough to really do them all the time. It's sort of like, yeah, I'll do it. But a lot of times I just say no to people. I didn't used to say no to any guest, but now I'm like, I just, like these, there's a lot of actors that I'm like, what am I going to have you on the show for? You haven't acted in anything in 5 years. And even then you were a role player, and God bless, that's awesome. And you're an actor and go do your thing. But how am I going to help you?
No, the stock thing is intriguing, but so Shark Tank in the first, I think 3 seasons, 4 seasons would take 2.5% of the company. By ABC would take 2.5% of the company,
Yeah.
regardless if you got a deal or not.
Right.
And Mark Cuban put a stop to that. I mean, for all the bad things Mark Cuban has done,
Yeah.
that's one really good thing that he's done. He put a stop to that because a lot of those early pitches, they would be like, oh, we want 40% of the company, well, or 45% of the company. It's like, okay, well, I got to give up 2.5%, and if I don't
Yeah.
already own 100%, then I just signed half my company away
Right.
to the Shark and ABC. I think that the symbiotic relationship of the nature of like, this is not a pitch. I mean, people come or on my show, it's not a pitch
Right.
or even me just having them on the Shark Tank pitch is not it's not a thing. Like, I mean, I do critique their websites and all that. So to me, I really think that it's tough for me to say that. And look, I know I'm the guy that was like, hey, you should charge a guest fee and all that. And
Yeah. Yeah.
but I think that I don't know. I don't know. I had to chew on that a little bit more
Yeah.
because I think the bigger you get, I think that because it changes it shifts the power dynamic of who's
Hmm.
important, like who's more
Yeah.
important at that point. But
Yeah.
hey, Larry King charged like 10 grand up until he passed away to be
Yeah.
interviewed on this is Larry King or something like that.
Yeah.
His not Larry King live show on CNN.
And I promise, going on Ellen's Christmas list, when she had her show, I promise that costs over $250,000 to get your product in there, and you got to give a bunch away. Like it.
Well, yeah. I mean, you see, was it a couple of the companies that have been on Shark Tank did have. Oh, I appreciate that, Mina. I hope I'm saying that name right. A couple of those companies that were on Oprah's list, it's like they
Yeah.
had connections to Oprah somehow, some way. She didn't happen to find it. I mean, maybe a small percentage of them was somebody that she's paying to like
Hmm.
curate for her magazine or whatever to
Right.
like go and find things, right? Find cool things. But yeah, it's like, oh, it was I'm the hairdresser for Oprah when she's on the East Coast or something. Like, these are the types of things that come up, and that's how they find it. I mean, at the end of the day, it goes back to what I said earlier about it's about relationships and networking
Yeah.
and all that. So I don't know. To me, I really love the idea of making majority of my money by just educating and entertaining people,
Yeah.
and not having to placate to a sponsor, not having to placate to
Yes.
ABC. I mean, to a certain extent, I like. So okay, so we're deep enough into this interview now where I can talk a little more candidly, because anybody that's watching might not watch to this point, but
Yeah.
I stray away. One thing I do stray away from is generally saying anything. Well, generally mean in general, because I try to be the super version of myself, right?
Right.
But I try to stay away from being hypercritical of the Sharks. Not because I necessarily want or care if they come on my show at some point, but I, I think that the way I see it, I am representing Shark Tank to a certain point because they could turn my channel off like that
Right.
if they really wanted to, right? Um, I mean, and not even turn my channel off. They would just probably copyright claim all the
Yep.
videos
Every
and
single one. Right. Right.
yeah, I've had one copyright strike in 2.5 2 years of doing this, right? And that wasn't from them; it was from Discovery Channel. And I think that came because I was doing the show. What's it called? Undercover Billionaire, which
Uh-huh.
didn't have any billionaires on the show, but but anyway, the thing was that was on Discovery Plus, and they didn't copyright claim or strike any of my videos until I got to like episode, I want to say 8 of
Mm,
11, and I'm like, I can't imagine why. Is because it's getting too close to the end of the show, and they want people to have a reason to still go to Discovery Plus. They didn't copyright strike any of my other videos because
right.
they could have striked my whole channel at that point because there was 7 other videos, right? They could have just been like, boom, 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 your channel shut down, right? You just lost it all. So I took it upon myself to just basically get rid of all those other, delete all those other videos, and I just lived with the one strike until it, evaporated on its own. Um, so to a certain extent, I do feel like I'm representing Shark Tank, in a way that I don't want to represent it in a negative light because I don't want them to shut down the channel. It would suck, not just for
Yeah.
me, but for the people who actually watch it and learn from it and learn from me and all of that. So I do kind of wish we had a relationship though, because then I could maybe change how I shoot my videos so I don't have to like punch in so far or
Right.
and worry about the copyright claim system, just copyright claiming me constantly. But
Right.
for the most part, I don't have that problem too much anymore, but I definitely still have that problem. Like two
Mm-hmm.
videos from the season premiere actually just got copyright claimed, and I had to re-edit them and repost them to my channel
Yeah.
because magically 2 weeks afterwards it said the copyright claim system picked up on one of my a couple
That's a
portions of my
real thing
video.
though. Like when they update that thing every now and then, like, oh, a whole bunch of stuff just got hit. And they're like, oh, sorry, that was us. And you're like, yeah, but you shut me. You shut me. It's a real. It
Yeah.
just goes back to the YouTube thing. Well, listen, man, I've had you for like an hour and a half. I got to get you out there on the road to go run and everything. This is awesome. Let's just come back and do one again. I dig what you're doing, and I love that you're having so much success. I know there's more to follow because you're super, and you're Joe
Oh.
and you're Pardo. But just in general, man, I dig who you are and how you're living your best podcast life because it's legit and I love it.
Well, thank you, Pete. I pride myself on being able to provide that. And that's one of the things I always find funny is when people are like, well, you don't have a Lamborghini. Like you're not,
Uh huh.
stretched out from a
Yeah.
Lamborghini. So you can't be, who are you to be giving business advice? And it's like,
Yeah.
oh God, I've been around this
Uh huh.
stuff since I was a kid, like
Yeah.
since I was like 6 years old, working in the warehouse. Like I promise you, I know, and I've
Yeah.
studied at the feet of other people, and my podcast was me studying at the feet of other people too, not just in my own bubble, my own, my own family's
Yeah.
business. So I know generally what I'm talking about when we talk about processes, systems,
Uh huh.
teams, communication. Heck,
Yeah.
one of my titles at one point was director of communications, and it wasn't just because I'm a tech guy.
Yeah.
It had a double entendre to it. So
Right.
Peter, I very much appreciate you having me. I would be honored to come back anytime. I'm not worried about the time. What time is it? It's 8:30 here, in Philly. So I am not worried about it. I was going to do an hour either on the elliptical or go out running anyway, because I am darn set on losing some weight,
Good.
more weight. So I again, I appreciate you, Pete, and I'd be honored to come back again. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep interviewing awesome people. Keep finding those nuggets of information and documenting people's lives. That's what I loved about doing my first podcast. It was the Dreamers podcast when the first iteration of my show, being a journal for people's lives and giving people an opportunity. And now we see it like, it's like 6 years later or 8 years later, and there's going back and like people are like, oh, I get to listen to this and it's so awesome, and can I come back on? And I'm like, right now time is so limited, like it's hard. In fact, Pete, right tonight, I wouldn't have been able to do tonight if my daughter's softball game wasn't canceled.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
It opened up a window of opportunity, so I was able to be here. But yes, a third time would be an absolute honor, and I'm pumped for the future. I'm pumped for the future of what I have going on here. In fact, I was just talking with a local. I don't want to be too specific. A local news outlet producer, and we were like workshopping over the weekend. How can I get my stuff there?
Yeah.
So on a major network in the top 5 market.
Come on. Yeah.
We'll see. I'm trying. So, and that's what you got to do. You got to try. So, Pete, Thank you again. It's been an honor. And I appreciate that you appreciate what I'm doing here. And it really means the world to me. It really, as somebody who's been creating content for 30 years now, it means the absolute, or 30 years. Yeah. Since 96. So getting close to 30 years, it means the actually, no, 36. I'm 36. So yeah, since I was 10 years old. So almost 30 years. It means the absolute world to me.
Okay. Stand by for 1 sec. Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much